we need to talk about birds in Planet Zoo. We already have birds. We also have some flying animals, but when it comes to actual flying birds, this game remains woefully unfledged. So the question that we've been asking ourselves is, will free flight be implemented? And honestly, at this point, I don't think so. First of all, the game is 5 years old, and while that is by no means a record, it is a pretty good run for support and development. Frontier has also announced that they will be putting out 3 new games in the coming years. Add to that the recent layoffs, and it should be obvious that Planet Zoo will have less work going into it, not more. Also, Planet Zoo will be coming to console this year. And as much as we of course welcome console players, cross-platform releases in the past have been synonymous with an end to development of Frontier's games. Also, at some point, someone said something, this is very not vague at all, about a 200 animal limit, which we are definitely closing in on. Lastly, one small detail that I have noticed that I haven't heard anyone else talk about is that on the game's loading screen, underneath the Cobra Engine logo, it says copyright 2019 to 2023. So far, this has been updated annually, and of course it may just be an oversight or it may be something that will be updated with the next update, but the circumstantial evidence is adding up. On the bright side, however, we do know that Planet Zoo will be getting at least one more DLC. So, assuming that free flight will not happen, and of course assuming that we do want more birds, here are 20 new species of birds that could absolutely be added to Planet Zoo right now without the implementation of free flight. Starting with number 20 on my personal hope list, the Mandarin duck. This species of small migratory waterfowl is endemic to Eastern Asia. The Mandarin duck is very popular in zoos and has been bred in captivity outside of Asia for nearly 300 years. After all, what self-respecting member of European nobility doesn't have a collection of colorful birds? Because of their long-standing popularity, there are several well-established populations of these tiny rainbow quackers throughout Europe, resulting from captive birds escaping into the wild. Mandarin ducks are excellent flyers, but hey, so are swans and cranes. And I absolutely think these gorgeous little duckies would work in a Planet Zoo pond. As ducks go, the mandarin is relatively shy, but it does like a lot of foliage, so I'm sure we could build some very nice habitats for this feathered little gem. And at number 19, we have the marabou stork. Found throughout sub-Saharan Africa, this enormous wading bird can grow as tall as 150 centimeters, or close to 5 feet. They can almost look me in the eye. Not sure I'd want that though, since that massive face cone of a beak is between 25 and 35 centimeters, giving it about the same size range as the lower arm of an adult human. And these grim reapers of the savannah have a wingspan to match the rest of their size, the largest specimens rivaling the Andean condor. And that means that they too are excellent flyers. Bonus fact, despite this bird's diet of rotten dead things and its eccentric aesthetic, Marabou is the name of a very popular brand of Swedish chocolate. And at number 18, we have the gray-crowned crane. This is a wading bird that lives in eastern sub-Saharan Africa. It prefers flat land with relatively sparse vegetation, and unlike most cranes, it will often make its home in relatively dry areas, although they do prefer to breed near fresh water. This is a highly requested animal in Planet Zoo, and it would be easy to add to the game since there's already a crane rig. They would have to scale down that rig a little bit though, because even at a full meter in height, the gray-crowned crane is only about 2/3 the height of its red-crowned cousin. It too is an excellent flyer, but we don't need to talk about that. We should, however, talk about the fact that this beautiful animal is endangered due to habitat loss and pesticides building up in their food chain. Next up, number 17, the Atlantic canary, or its domesticated counterpart. These tiny little songbirds have been kept as pets for more than 400 years. Unsurprisingly, the humble canary has had a significant impact of many areas of human culture, mainly but not only in the Western world. The keeping of caged songbirds started, of course, with European royalty, again, wanting to flaunt their wealth by having the biggest, brightest collection of feathered treasures. This is the era of Louis XVI and the Palace of Versailles. Eventually, though, more and more people got into the breeding game, and by the late 1800s, the canary was common among, well, commoners. And that is when it was cast in a much less glamorous role. For almost 100 years, British miners would bring canaries into the coal mines to use them as carbon monoxide detectors. With their tiny respiratory systems, these birds start showing signs of poisoning within just a few minutes, while it takes humans much longer. This gave the miners a chance to get out before it was too late. Personally, I hate this, and it makes me very, very sad, and apparently some of the miners felt the same way, because some coal mine canary cages actually had a tiny little oxygen tank attached, so that the miners could save the bird while they were fleeing the deadly gas. These days, the domestic canary is mostly kept as a companion animal, but they are also bred and trained for highly competitive and sometimes highly lucrative birdsong contests. And at number 16, budgies, another family favorite. These minuscule Australian parakeets are among the most popular pet birds in the world, and they've been bred to exist in a wide variety of color morphs, making them a great addition to Planet Zoo. Although in the wild, all budgies have the same green, yellow, and black plumage. They live in large migratory flocks, usually between a few dozen and a few hundred individuals. Some years, though, when unusually good breeding conditions are followed by a drought, you can see swarms of upwards of 100,000 little green birds gathering at waterholes. Apart from being popular pets, budgies are also very common in zoos. Both these and the canary would work just fine as regular small exhibit animals with the simple addition of a mesh barrier option. They would, however, be even more fantastic in the larger walkthrough exhibits. Number 15. The wild turkey. There's also a domesticated counterpart that we could get instead. This absolute chonker of a honker is native to North America and really should be the official national bird of the USA. Because of Thanksgiving, not because it's large. Although it really is. An adult male turkey weighs around 5 to 11 kilos. That's 11 to 24 pounds for the metrically challenged. And the females weigh around half that. In spite of their heft, wild turkeys, unlike their domestic counterparts, are actually pretty decent flyers over really short distances. In the wild, turkeys have been known to forage alongside deer, since the deer have an excellent sense of smell and pretty unimpressive eyesight, whereas the turkeys have great eyesight and a poor sense of smell. This is a mutually beneficial relationship. In-game, this would give us some nice interspecies enrichment. On a personality note, the in-game turkey should definitely be marked as confident, since sumo chickens who live near humans have very little fear of people, or dogs, or cars. Okay, they're pretty dumb. At number 14, the golden pheasant, also known as the Chinese pheasant or the rainbow pheasant, and it is native to the mountainous forests of China. But, as with the Mandarin duck, feral populations exist on multiple continents, and for the same reason. When it comes to size, I have categorized these gilded chooks as a medium. Adult males are around 1 meter long, that's about 40 inches, and females are 60 to 70% of that. This, mind you, is their length from the tip of the beak to the tip of the tail, and the tail makes up 2/3 of their total length. Golden pheasants are common in zoos, but surprisingly often they're actually hybrids which have at some point interbred with other species of pheasant. Several color morphs exist, including leucistic. Or is it leucistic? I don't know. Either way, they're pale, which may have been caused by this interbreeding or inbreeding, or I don't really know. But they exist, and it'd be awesome. What this multicolored woodland bird lacks in camouflage, I am sorry to say it does not make up for in flight ability. And according to Wikipedia, heterozygosity of the most polymorphic major histocompatibility complex locus was highly related with the chroma and brightness of the feathers. whatever that means. Next, at number 13, we have the scarlet ibis, also known as the red ibis. These adorable little fluff balls on stilts are native to the Caribbean and much of tropical South America. They are one of the most common birds in mixed species aviaries, and with their bright, stunning plumage, you can see why. Also, look at the face. These birds are very strong flyers, but they do spend the majority of their time on foot, wading through shallow water looking for food. They are a species of least concern, and in the wild, they live in flocks ranging from 30 to several thousand individuals. Also, look at the face. At number 12, we have the roseate spoonbill. This spatula-faced wading bird is native to the tropical wetlands of South and Central America, with its natural range just peeking into the northernmost of the two continents. They are another very common inhabitant in the zoo aviaries and another species of least concern. They are also another example of a bird which is in fact a very strong flyer, but could still work well in Planet Zoo without that mechanic. At about 70 to 85 centimeters, they are roughly the size of the lesser flamingo. And in case you're thinking, why are all the birds suddenly pink? I do have some non-pink alternatives in the utensil-beaked category, namely the white spoonbill, which is from North America, or the Eurasian spoonbill, which is also white, native to Europe, Asia, and Africa. And at number 11, the Kori bustard. And no, that is not a manipulated image. It is a pretty small gazelle, but the Kori bustard is the largest flying bird in Africa and one of the heaviest living animals capable of flying at all. Record specimens have been said to weigh in at just south of 40 kilos, that is 75 pounds, although the average verified weight is about a third of that, still making it a pretty heavy bird. Because of their weight though, they prefer using their legs over their wings and they rarely take to the air. This enormous omnivore is native to much of southern Africa, where it makes its home pretty much anywhere except forests. Being a very shy animal who also prefers pretty sparse vegetation, this would make them an interesting challenge to build for in Planet Zoo. The Kori is considered near threatened by the IUNC, although local South African wildlife institutions consider them vulnerable due to multiple threats including hunting, pesticide poisoning, and collisions with high-voltage power lines. These majestically meandering megabirds have made their impression on human culture for millennia, being featured in stories, dances, common sayings, and in both ancient and contemporary art. Moving on to number 10, Darwin's rhea, also known as the lesser rhea because it's the smaller of two species of these South American flightless birds. I put it in the extra large category, but that is mostly because of their weight. At 90 to 100 centimeters tall, they are just slightly shorter than the gray-crowned crane and less than half the height of the common ostrich. As their larger African and Australian cousins, rheas prefer grassland habitats and are very social birds living in groups of 5 to 30 animals. With the birds we already have in Planet Zoo, rheas would be very easy to add, but even though I personally adore these guys, I don't know if another ostrich-looking thunder chicken would feel like an exciting addition to most players, though they do like sharing their habitats with other animals, including capybaras. So there's that. And at number 9, the great white pelican. This suitcase-faced fish scooper, try saying that 10 times fast, has been very high on the meta wish list for some time, and it is a common resident in zoos and wildlife parks alike. With a wingspan rivaling that of the great albatross, wild pelicans can most certainly fly, but captive specimens often have their flight feathers clipped so they stay in one place. In the wild, they're native to no less than 3 continents, calling the wetlands of temperate and tropical regions alike home. These birds are huge, smell like fish, and will try to eat anything and everything, so it's probably not surprising that they are a species of least concern. Although personally I would be concerned if one of them got too close. Moving on to number 8, the Victoria crowned pigeon. This is another bird that is very common in zoos, and they're often kept in large indoor tropical mixed species walk-through habitats, which in Danish, by the way, would almost all be one word. They absolutely can fly, and they do so quite well when frightened. They also nest in trees, but much of the time they prefer walking around foraging for insects and fallen fruit in the rainforests of New Guinea and other nearby islands. I have categorized them as small, although for pigeons they certainly aren't, being closer in size to domestic chickens. These emerald chooks are unfortunately under threat from both habitat loss and continued hunting. Now at number 7, we have a thing that we also have not just one bird, but 3 to 5 species. Because what I'm thinking here is that several of these tiny flying gems could be introduced simultaneously as with the butterflies. And they could use the exact same enrichment items, being unique to the large walkthrough exhibit. For that, of course, flight would obviously be needed. Shut up, birds. Flight would obviously be needed, but not necessarily free flight. Because the flight pattern of hummingbirds is so unique, it could be programmed without considering the impact of each wing flap on the animal's position in the air. Other birds want to be a part of this. And there are so many to choose from. More than 360 species live throughout the Americas, from scorching desert to cool mountain woodlands, and from arid grasslands to tropical rainforest. All these nectar drinkers are tiny, and the smallest of them all, the bee hummingbird, can weigh less than 2 grams. That is 1 cube of sugar. Also look at the face. At number 6, the red-legged Sirima, also known as the crested Kariyama. These blue-eyed beauties inhabit the grasslands of South America, where they either live alone or in monogamous pairs, though they do sometimes form small family groups of up to 4 individuals. They very rarely fly, but they can run faster than a human and jump into their nests, which they build in bushes or low trees. Sirimas are relatively common in zoos and can be kept with other animals. And they exhibit one behavior that I would love to see more of in Planet Zoo, namely group vocalization. Bonded pairs sing together at dusk and dawn in a style which supposedly sounds like a mix between a clucking turkey and a yappy little dog. This oversized Chihuahua chicken is 75 to 90 centimeters from tail to beak, that is 30 to 35 inches for the metrically impaired, yet with its giraffe-like features it weighs only 1.5 kilograms to 2.5 kilos, 3 to 5 pounds. And look at that face. At number 5, the blue-crowned hanging parrot. Another XXS bird, these minuscule parrots are only 12 centimeters long and weigh just 28 grams. In comparison, at 15 centimeters and 50 grams, lovebirds are hefty little chonkers. The blue-crowned hanging parrot live in mangroves and riverine forests of Southeast Asia, and they are my absolute number 1 favorite animal at Copenhagen Zoo. Look at them. They look like a medieval painting of a parrot by someone who had never actually seen a parrot. It's just wrong, and I love them. Also, they're clumsy little dorks. They do fly between branches, but with their short little wings and stubby little tails, they are not great navigators, and they generally prefer climbing over flying. Oh, and why are they called hanging parrots? Well, that's because they sleep upside down. Yeah, like bats. They tuck in their head to look like little leaves, and if a predator should find them, they just let go, because falling is much easier than flying, especially if you're still halfway asleep. Look at that bird! Number 4, the Abyssinian ground hornbill. Now this is another personal favorite of mine, found only in the northern parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Ground hornbills prefer open grassland without too much vegetation. They are another nearly flightless bird, which isn't super surprising when you know that these beautiful black birds are around 1 meter in length and weigh roughly 4 kilos. They live in monogamous pairs or small family groups consisting of parrots and their adult offspring. Even the juveniles that do end up striking out on their own stay with the parents for at least 3 years, which means that a lot of energy goes into caring for their young. Normally, a pair of Abyssinian ground hornbills will only raise 1 chick to adulthood every 9 years. So even though they can live up to 40 years in captivity, these amazing birds are very much under threat. Counting down to number 3, the shoebill stork, which is actually not a stork at all, as it is closer related to both pelicans and herons. This large wading bird lives in the swamps and wetlands of Central Africa, and would definitely need some water in its Planet Zoo habitat. And when I say large, I mean it. These guys are up to 140 centimeters tall when fully grown. That is the height of an average 12-year-old. Though they are capable of flight to some extent, shoebills prefer to keep both feet on the ground, or more often in the water. Even though they're solitary, they are not territorial, meaning they tolerate others of their species as long as they maintain a solid social distance. And they are only very rarely aggressive towards humans. Unsurprising, these leftover dinosaurs are popular in zoos, but they very rarely breed in captivity, and they are vulnerable to extinction in the wild. At number 2, the Atlantic puffin. These ridiculously adorable parrots of the sea are native to the North Atlantic region, where they dig out their nesting holes on grassy slopes atop coastal cliffs. The young birds, called pufflings, need these rocky diving boards in order to fling themselves into the ocean when they are ready to leave the nest, because puffins are not great flyers. They need to run full speed across the surface of the water while flapping their wings in order to get enough momentum to take off. And their landing pretty much consists of just crashing into the nearest wave. Lucky for them, their short, sturdy little wings are perfectly adapted for diving, or as I'm sure these fluffy little adorabirds would call it, underwater flight. Outside the breeding season, puffins live pretty secretive, solitary lives far out to sea. Imagine trying to find one bird in the Atlantic Ocean. Still, they are not uncommon in zoos and could be added to Planet Zoo, possibly using a slightly modified penguin rig. And we need them. Look at them. Why are they not at the top of every meta wish list? Atlantic puffins are approximately 30 centimeters or 1 foot tall. More than 12 million individuals are alive in the wild today, but they are considered vulnerable because of how quickly the population has been declining over the past 2 decades. The reasons for this include overfishing and the encroachment of invasive predators such as rats, foxes, and feral domestic cats. Bonus info: puffins are the reason why porgs exist in the Star Wars universe. The islands where The Last Jedi was filmed are home to large colonies of these birds, and rather than editing every single one out of the finished footage by painstakingly recreating whatever was behind them, porgs were created to just slap on there like stickers and cover up the earthbirds. And if you're wondering about the personality of puffins, they are as trusting and inquisitive as porgs. And at number 1, none other than the secretary bird. This long-legged death stalker endemic to sub-Saharan Africa looks like the love child of a harpy eagle and a gray-crowned crane, and it is in fact a member of the same order as eagles, hawks, and vultures. The secretary bird prefers open grassland in order to better see its prey, which it kills by stomping it to death. Their long legs and quick reflexes have even enabled them to kill and eat snakes, a feat which they have become rather famous for. They grow to an impressive height of 130 centimeters, making them at least a full foot taller than Darwin's rhea. But with an average weight of just over 4 kilos, they weigh only a fraction of the South American thunder chicken, which means that despite their size, secretary birds can fly, which is when you can really see their family resemblance to vultures and hawks. Still, they spend the vast amount of their time with both feet on solid ground, making them a prime candidate for Planet Zoo. In nature, secretary birds are solitary or live in monogamous pairs, though they do sometimes form loosely knit family groups. These glorious creatures are unfortunately endangered. They're not traditionally hunted by humans. In fact, many cultures have revered them as symbols of strength and protection, and have in turn done their best to protect these birds. But being large, solitary predators, they're spread out over a rather vast area, putting them at high risk of habitat fragmentation. And in recent decades, this is exactly what has caused a rapid decline in their population. Last but not least, an honorable mention, the kakapo. Because as much as I would love to have this grumpy old man looking moss chicken in my zoo, it would be extremely unrealistic. since each remaining individual of this critically endangered New Zealand native is named, tagged, and monitored, and any attempt at capturing one for export would be met with the harshest punishment available, as it should be. And now, my fellow bird lovers, did I forget anyone? Did I leave out your personal favorite? Should someone have been further up the list than they were? Please do let me know in the comments. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this. Are any of these birds actually likely, or am I only dreaming? I would have sung that, but I didn't. You're welcome. Bye!